Can tell you when I walked into the Cheyenne Mountain Operation Command Center on that morning, just as the 7 o'clock shift changeover briefing was starting, there was little time for anger, fear, or crying. Instead, a joint binational team of professionals, and it's so great to see you all here today, side by side. This joint team of professionals were glued to TV screens, trying to make sense of the horrible pictures of black smoke rising from the New York City skyline. Now, relying initially on television news feeds, along with our extensive but somewhat dated system of radar and other sensors around the world, we began to gather real-time information to add clarity to what was rapidly deteriorating into the fog of war. As we watched live video of the second plane hitting the South Tower of the World Trade Center, it became evident that this was no mistake. America was, in fact, under attack. And for the first time in history, the duty crew began to execute our real-world, not exercise, our real-world air attack response checklist. Now, keep in mind, over the years, the activities inside that mountain with our Cold War thinking had led us to build checklist procedures to respond to an air attack involving Russian bombers coming over the north. And as you might imagine, those checklists led to initiating certain retaliatory actions which simply weren't appropriate in this situation, for these attackers left no return address. Well, thankfully, a quick-thinking command director, Colonel Scott Norwood of the Air Force, stopped the checklist execution before we took any regrettable steps. Now today, with the benefit of hindsight, 23 years after the fact, we can clearly recall the attack sequence. Between 7:59 and 8:42 Eastern Time, 4 commercial U.S. aircraft departed from Boston, Washington, Dulles, and Newark, 3 of them bound for Los Angeles and 1 for San Francisco, only to be hijacked by radical Islamic jihadists. And they intentionally crashed into the World Trade Center's north, then south towers, the Pentagon, and the 4th, which was destined for either the Capitol or the White House, we'll never know for sure, crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after being overtaken by some heroic Americans. But on that day, the most accurate source of information came from the men and women inside that mountain right behind me. Consider a couple examples. Among our team's actions on that day was to convene what was known as an air attack conference, gathering all the combatant commanders, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the White House on a secure phone conference. It was moderated by the National Military Command Center in the Pentagon. When the first of those conferences convened, and I think it was around 11 o'clock Mountain Time, the Pentagon's duty officers surprised us with a call saying, "NORAD, please update the conferees on the situation." Well, without hesitation, our Air Warning Center director, a 26-year-old U.S. Navy lieutenant, a recent Naval Academy graduate, he jumped on the line and provided a detailed blow-by-blow sequential account of everything that had happened that morning. It was a performance so impressive, a performance for the ages, and one that I was so proud of, knowing that our team responded in such a professional way. Now, we took many other actions that morning. Established an open phone line with the FAA headquarters in Washington, through which we directed the grounding of all civil aircraft to either land or turn around and go back to their destination. At one point during the morning, when the FAA informed us that they were tracking a commercial aircraft who had departed Seattle, flight planned to Denver, but he wasn't responding to any ground controller calls. Well, thinking perhaps that this was another hijacked aircraft and that our command center inside Cheyenne Mountain might be the target, we directed our engineering team to close and secure the access tunnel's blast doors to ensure that we could continue the mission if that attack occurred. And during the days, weeks, and months to follow, NORAD, through their command center inside the mountain and with incredible operational expertise of air defense alert fighters across the country, executed their procedures to protect our nation's critical infrastructure and to allow Americans to resume some sort of new normalcy. I mention these stories not just to relive the tragic day and the chaos that we all felt, but also to remind you of how fortunate we are to play host to remarkable military professionals, police and fire department right here in Colorado Springs. Now, we as Americans and our Canadian brothers and sisters have always been good at memorializing our fallen. Through victories and defeats, last week I came down here and I walked around this police memorial and to many of the memorials right behind where you're sitting today. And I learned a lot. It makes you really think hard about our past, excuse me, and our roles in the future. Here in Colorado Springs, we are blessed with 6 unique 9/11 monuments, thanks to the selfless efforts of Mr. Don Addy and his wife Susan. They're displayed at Fort Carson, Cheyenne Mountain, Peterson, Schriever, UCCS, excuse me, and up at the Air Force Academy. I want each and every one of you to go visit them. They're powerful reminders of that fateful day. And as we gather here today, and thank you again, Don and General Ed Anderson, for organizing this ceremony. Some people said, why the 23rd anniversary? And you know the answer is obvious. Every year we need to remember this day. Every day we need to remember. So as we gather here today, it's appropriate and customary to mourn the dead for sure, and pray for their families, even while we celebrate those incredibly heroic first responders and service responders and our servicemen and women, our defenders of freedom to whom we owe so much. In fact, this past Sunday, and some of you may have seen this, 60 Minutes ran a touching hour-long tribute to the members of the Fire Department of New York who gave their lives attempting to rescue workers who were trapped in the upper floors of the Twin Towers. There were some gut-wrenching stories about uncommon valor and the utmost selflessness exhibited by some 343 Fire Department of New York members who perished the day the towers collapsed. God bless them all. The show ended showing one of the survivors making an impassioned appeal that we don't allow the story to fade away into a forgotten page in the history books. I thought on top of that it was a perfect opportunity for the producers to close with a stern reminder of who caused that horrific mayhem that day. It's those evildoers who hate America. And herein lies a call to action for all of us. We've heard the adage, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. So it only follows that we must do everything we can to avoid a repeat of history. We can start by ensuring that our kids' and grandkids' history book tell the actual story of 9/11 based on ground truth. We must vow to stomp out revisionist or apologist accounts that veer away from the truth or shift blame from other than the cold-blooded terrorists who perpetrated these heinous attacks. I urge you to get involved in your local schools and talk to the school boards. Ask to read what we're teaching youngsters about 9/11. And if you smell a rat, take action. And finally, for goodness sakes, we cannot allow ourselves to fall prey to election year political rhetoric designed to confuse American voters by diluting the most important issues. In my mind, the one preeminent issue that threatens our way of life is the increased likelihood of another 9/11-like terrorist attack here on American soil. Allowing millions of undocumented, unvetted illegals into our country over the past 3.5+ years is simply unforgivable. We absolutely must secure our borders, and it looks to me like voters, all of us will decide whether or not that happens. So like Alan Jackson and many of you, I too know Jesus, and I know God's word to be the truth. So I'll leave you with this passage from Psalm 37, verses 1 through 4. Do not fret because of evildoers, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you peace. Thank you, and God bless you all, and God bless America and Canada.